In today's video, I'm going to be collaborating with several other Instagrammers and YouTubers to bring you guys a Feywild module. And also this module we've crafted as well as put together a PDF download for you to download the module and play on your own. So go ahead and check the description for links to both the module as well as the other 4 Instagrammers / YouTubers who are included in this collaboration. Okay, so my part of the dungeon was the lower level before you get to the roots of the tree trunk. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I suggest you go back to the first video in this collaboration, start from there and watch all the way through, and then come back and watch this video. And so my room was the puzzle room. And I'm not always the best at puzzles. I don't know, especially when it comes to like wilderness like this. I don't know, it's kind of different than the typical dungeon. The basis of the room is that the characters come down and they're blocked by impenetrable vines. They have to make their way through those vines by being baptized in the Necrotic Sap from the previous room. And if you've been following along, you'll remember what I'm talking about. There's little pools of sap in the room above this room. So anyway, let's get on with the build. There's several things that I was supposed to include in the build. I'm going to touch over them really quick, but for time's sake and editing's sake, I'm going to just be doing like the overall basis of what I did on each little step. If you see something you really like and you really want to know, go ahead and comment below and I'll try to make another video about it. So yeah, first thing I do is measure out 10-inch circles and partial circles. And the idea is that I'm just going to like tier the whole room up so that there's like a lot of vertical terrain for the characters to interact with. So yeah, I just use my compass and I draw circles and then I cut out the circles. And then each tier I'm trying to make it be able to stack on each other and as well as get interesting shapes. I don't have it glued together yet because I also have other ideas. And so I'm just going to take my ballpoint pen and I'm just going to draw all the center rings of all the wood. I don't know how true it is, but I always heard that each year trees grow a little bit more or less depending on the growing season and whatnot. So I try to vary the thickness of each of these lines. Plus, varying the thickness adds a little bit more visual appeal to something like this. Okay, now I'm cutting them more. I just want to vary the heights so they're not all 1-inch thickness. So I'm cutting them random sizes and I'm taking offcuts and cutting them thinner, if that makes sense. You'll see what I'm doing in the video. With this jig that I've made for my hot wire cutter, I just take these offcuts and whatnot and vary the height. And then I also make a hole in the bottom of the base because we want the characters to be able to go down that hole and we want the vines coming out of that hole and blocking them from being able to enter. Okay, and as with a lot of my wood builds, I'm using the wire brush to get all the textures just on the sides of all the tiers. I want to get the wood to be like kind of rotted, so I'm not being gentle with it like I normally would. Like say if I was doing tavern tiles, I'd be a little bit more gentle than I'm being with this. But for now, we're doing a nice rough texture. We're letting some of it chip off, and this is what we got. Start gluing it all together. I don't know if you can hear those kitties. Sorry if you can hear the kitties. I got them in the bathroom. Little baby kitties. Maybe I'll go get them. Okay, so basically, I hot glue everything together. Pretty simple step. Be careful when using hot glue. Colin, who's also included in this video, he burned himself using hot glue, so be careful. And then I'm start adding a bunch of cuts to the wood. You can see that. Like the wood splitting. We want split wood. And then I take the wire brush again and my blade. I just go back and forth. I use my blade to like chip up the wood even more. I just don't want it to look too even, you know? I probably spent way too much time doing this, but it was worth it. Okay, and I just start blending everything in with my knife too, chipping it even more. Like I said, I just want it to look nice and not too even. And then I take a piece of cereal box, and we are... what are we doing? We're gonna wrap the whole build in cereal box, and I'm just trying to get like an uneven looking texture. So I just kind of cut jags on the top of all the cereal box, and this is just to give it some structure and plan what I'm doing. And then I glue it to a foam core base, and the base isn't gonna warp too much because I'm using hot glue. In fact, it doesn't warp at all. And then I make a bunch of aluminum foil sausages, and I hot glue them all the way around the outside of the build. And then I go along the inside. And the inside, I don't do sausages. I just kind of do like a crinkled look. And the whole point of the aluminum foil is because I'm going to be adding air dry clay. And the air dry clay really needs something to stick to, and also something to give it some structure. Just a skeleton. And really, I mean, it looks pretty cool just with the aluminum foil on it. And then I start applying the air dry clay and sculpting it texture that I thought looked kind of like bark. And I use water to just smooth it out a little bit occasionally. Water and glue. I wanted to get a little bit of a crack on the air dry clay. This cheap air dry clay cracks really easy, so I did want to hold the outside together with some glue. If you don't want it to crack, I recommend mixing the white glue in with the clay and then applying it. I'll have a video on the screen where I did that, and it works really good. Then I paint the whole build black, and I'm using household latex paint for this. You can use Mod Podge too. They both hold up really good. And the first layer is just going to be a layer of like brown and gray. I go over it with brown first and splotches, and then I go over it with a lighter gray and splotches, and then I go over it with the more vibrant green and splotches. I just use my brush to scrub it in and get a smooth look. It's not a dry brush, it's not an overbrush, it's more of a scumble, and I don't know how to explain that. It's just a good way to like leave some of the tone underneath, but also have vibrant tones on top. And the inner part, I do a base of brown just to match. And I know brown isn't the most realistic. And I also ended up getting out my art paints, my heavy body art paints. And a lot of people hate heavy body acrylics in the crafting community, from what I've heard, and the miniature painting community. But I get really good results with some of them, especially if you get the more expensive types. And I know not everybody's into buying expensive paint. I'm not always, if I'm just doing like gray builds and things like that, but sometimes. And I use a lot of yellow ochre and a lot of green and a lot of magenta. And maybe it doesn't show up a whole lot. It's still like got a nice earthy feel to it. I feel like I could have brightened it up a little bit more, but it turned out good. I wanted everything else to stand out bright too. Then I do a quick one over with a khaki dry brush. And that's what we got. Pinks and greens and yellows. You can see the cracking and the crevices a lot more now. I kind of wish it would have cracked a little bit more in spots, but it looks good. And then I made this little mat of moss. And I learned about this from Table and Craft. So if you want to check out how to do this, you can go ahead to his channel and check that out, because it's a pretty good method for some thicker moss. He uses it on like roofs and things like that. And basically you're just taking this tulle fabric. It's called tulle. I don't know, they use it in like tutus and stuff, I think. And then you just put different layers of moss and grass and whatnot that you want to add to it. I wish I had a little bit of brighter greens and stuff, but I solved that problem in a little bit. So this is just a base, and it turns out really cool. And basically, I first started cutting it. That was not my preferred method. Once I started ripping it, it turned out really good. The moss turned out way good. And then I also add these little tufts. And this is turquoise, alien turquoise, and alien fire. And they're really vibrant. So I figured they could be like a type of moss on the outside of the tree too. And the Feywild's super vibrant. Probably a little bit more vibrant than I made it. I should have added some fluorescent colors, but... And then with the vine, I'm going to use a piece of rope. And I think this is jute rope. It's nice and like fibrous, and I figured it would make vines really cool. And that was easy enough. I just cut it the length I wanted it. I spread it out like limbs of a vine. Vines don't have limbs. Vines of a vine? Shoots of a vine? What are they called? I forget. Tendrils of a vine? And I just spread it out how I thought I'd want it. Once I was happy with that, I mixed up a little mixture of green paint and water in a little tub. And then I placed it out on a sheet of parchment paper. And I spread it out just in case it would like gunk up too much. I was a little concerned about it. And then I add like some yellow and some dark green to spots just to give some variation. I didn't want it to be one solid color. And then I set them out in the sun to dry, and we'll come back to those later. Now I wanted to figure out this lighting. I really wanted to have like a light at the center of the vine in the tunnel. These little clips, I don't know if you call them clips, they're like little, yeah, they're battery clips. These are 3D printed, and they were sent to me by one of my patrons, August McDaniel, who you may have heard in previous videos about. He's a big supporter on my Patreon, and he also inspires me to keep working, especially on that dungeon. And yeah, I got these things and tested it out. Worked pretty good. The yellow-green wasn't so bright. I was thinking that was going to look really cool, but I think it looked better on like Necron build. And I also ended up putting some of this mirrored poster board inside of there, just so the glow would be a little bit brighter. You can see it added some lights. It didn't really go, I don't know, the yellow-green just didn't have the vibrancy of some of the other lights. Now I got these Spellcrow mushrooms. Part of this room are these sentient mushrooms that whisper like bad things in your ear. You'll see in the module what I mean. I wrote it up better in the module. I'm not the best talker. I can write pretty good, just not talk. So anyway, I got these from Spellcrow, and they were nice enough just to send me these. I really liked these mushrooms, and I was really excited to use them in a build, so I cheated and used these. And then I paint up the mushrooms in a pretty simple color scheme. With the trunk, I wanted the trunks of the mushrooms to kind of blend in with the rest, and then the little ball cyst things on top. That'll be like, have a little bit of a glowy look. I don't know. Just a light white blue. And it's just a simple paint job. I'm not going to go too much into that. And then I add these little aquarium plants next to it. Little bits of aquarium plants next to it just to give it a little bit different of a look than just sitting there. I don't know, look better with these. They were just too bare. And then I make a corpse flower. Okay, I'm going to use hot glue a lot for this guy. So the base is basically hot glue and plastic, and held up by a toothpick covered in hot glue. And then each tentacle, it still makes it pretty bendable when you cover fluoro wire and hot glue, so I use that, bend it a little bit. And then the flowers, I use different sizes of beads. I wanted to give variation to flowers. Beads and tissue paper, just held in place with hot glue. I've seen people do this kind of flower with like Elmer's glue, white glue, PVA glue, whatever. And I didn't want to wait for it to dry, so I figured the hot glue was just fine. And when I was looking at the pictures, it didn't have a whole lot of foliage on it, so I just added a few sprigs. And then skulls. I do wish I would have went and got some of my skeletons and put like a body hanging off of there, because these things shoot out zombies, which is really cool. And then I just add the skulls on and texture it more with hot glue so it looks like there's some muscles, and that's what we got right there. And then we paint up the corpse flower. And with this guy, I kind of messed up spraying it when I was priming it, and I primed it just a green, overall green. I used a couple different cans of green just to give a varied look, but one of the cans was plugged up and it kind of like spat out and left a lot of texture, which is okay because this is kind of like goopy looking beast thing anyway. So, and I painted up just how I'd do a quick miniature paint job on this kind of thing. Pretty simple. I used a wash first and I just built it up from there. Now this is the Feed Me Seymour flower, as people have put it. It's not quite a Feed Me Seymour, but it's the same concept. Flower that looks like it wants to eat people. But this flower is actually a good flower, and he's going to be stuck in the vines, and he's going to want help getting out of the vines. And he's basically just different aquarium and fake house plants put together. Just pieces of them, and I just glued them all together. And the tongue is just hot glue. And I didn't get a lot of footage of this because the camera died, of me gluing it together at least. But I got some footage of me painting it, so we get it painted up fairly quick, and we have ourselves a little sentient flower. Now for the tree sap that's dripping down from above. This is just to give the characters a hint that the vine doesn't like the sap. Like the little flower guy is going to talk about it, and the little sentient mushrooms are going to be like, that's not right. It's going to be like feeding doubts into the players' heads. I just add some straight black. This is Mars black. It's really dark, so it's really easy to get this look. And then I add hot glue streaks to all the black spots. Or not all of them. Most of the black spots I add those hot glue streaks. And I just let it drip where it wants to drip. When I get it how I want it, I do a glaze of kind of a translucent yellow that I've mixed up. The translucent yellow also has some Vallejo color shift paint in it. So it's hard to see on camera, the color shift, but in person it looks pretty cool. If you happen to be getting some value today, then I'd really appreciate it if you'd like this video. It not only shows me that you like the content that I'm providing, but it also shows YouTube that it's worth watching, and will get it out to more crafters like you and me. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more tabletop gaming crafts and art based on games like Dungeons & Dragons and Warhammer. This collaboration includes Jay from Jay's Tabletop Terrain on Instagram, Colin from the Crazy Crafter livestream here on YouTube, Wylock, which I'm sure you all know, me, who you should know because you're watching this channel, and Eric's Hobby Workshop, and his video will be next in the series. So I'm excited to see what he's come up with. He's doing the roots and the final room in this dungeon.